Welcome, everyone. Thanks for joining us for our exclusive webinar, What is Scrum? An Introduction to the Scrum Framework, presented by Project Management Update. I am Rebecca, the webinar coordinator of Project Management Update, and I'm excited to bring you this session with hard-earned insight about an overview of the Scrum Framework using facts and real-world examples. I'm really looking forward to talking to Eric Naiburg and what will be an interesting and amusing conversation. We are recording this webinar in case you have to leave early at any point. We're sending the link to the landing page in the chat box right now. Up next, and before we go any further, let's get some technical things out of the way. Please feel free to ask questions during today's session. You could do so by submitting them to the questions panel on the right side of your screen. Great questions make a great webinar, so please submit your questions throughout so we can get even more fresh insights from Eric. My lovely colleague Erin will be fielding your questions today. She'll be happy to answer any questions you might have, so pull up the questions panel and say hello to let Erin know that you're listening. Lastly, if you have any audio issues during today's presentation, you may wish to choose to dial in by phone. You can do so by selecting the More button in the upper right portion of your screen, and then select the Switch to Phone option. Up next, and what we're all here for, I am talking to the man himself, Eric Naiburg. Eric is a co-author. Hello. Eric is the co-author of the UML for database design and UML for mere mortals. Eric is responsible for all aspects of marketing, support, outbound communications, professional Scrum trainer programs, partners, and operations for Scrum.org. Eric was a program director at IBM and Rational Software, where he was originally hired in 1999 by original Scrum team member John. Unfortunately, I'm going to mess up this name a little bit. Thank you. For who he worked for several years and worked closely with another original team member, Jeff McKenna, sitting in the next desk. So without any further ado, Eric, it's your show. Take it away.
Great. Thank you very much. And good morning, good afternoon, depending on where you might be around the world. Thanks for taking the time today. I'm coming to you from an office, which is pretty exciting. It's only my third time in our office in the last year and a half. So that's kind of cool and relevant to some of what we'll talk about today. Our headquarters for Scrum.org are up in Burlington, Massachusetts, which is where I am. I actually reside down in Pennsylvania in the Lehigh Valley, which is about an hour and 20 minutes from New York City, from Manhattan. So anyway, you've heard enough about me. I'm going to do one more slide about me, and I'm going to use this not because of to introduce myself, but to talk about Scrum. Excuse me. So as you can see, that's me in the circle, or kind of looks like me, I guess. Having just caught 8 innings in about 85-degree heat in a baseball tournament up in Maine. One of the gentlemen back there, which is kind of cool, the guy with his arm around another gentleman in the back row, is Oil Can Boyd. Those of you who are baseball fans, and certainly if you're a Boston Red Sox fan, you may remember him from 1986 and in the World Series and in pitching in the World Series and things. And I had the luxury to catch him during that tournament for 6 innings, which is pretty cool. And I bring that up because it's important to my story. When I think about Scrum and the importance of Scrum, the value of Scrum, it ties right back to this. It ties back to the team. It ties back to empowering the team. In Scrum, the team is self-managed. We work together to understand how to solve problems and relate to problems and deal with what's happening. And it comes the same in that. As a catcher, I have my view of the whole field. I'm the only one that gets to see the whole field. And I have to make decisions. And I have to be empowered by our team manager. If we're talking about professional baseball, the general manager and so on, to be able to make decisions and really help the team. The team has to be empowered to make decisions. The person who catches a ground ball can't wait for somebody to tell them should they throw it to second or to first. They have to be able to make those decisions, and they have to learn. And one of the most important pieces of Scrum is an empirical process. Empiricism is all about inspection and adaptation. It's about learning as we do. and changing based on what we learn. Well, when I'm behind the plate, I could see it in this example, and the reason I bring oil can up, is his curveball was not working that day. His slider was working great in his fastball, but his curveball wasn't working. I can see that from behind the plate. You're sitting in the dugout, you're sitting in the stands, even the people in the field, even oil can, whether it was ego or reality, thought, why aren't you calling the curve? He actually called me out to the mound at one point and said, you've got to be thinking if you're going to be catching, why aren't you calling my curveball? Now, me as just some software guy from Scrum.org, talking to a major leaguer, even though I'm behind the plate, coming out, telling him that is tough, take some courage and things, that, hey, buddy, your curveball's not working today. But I could see that, and I had to change my behavior that day to call pitches that maybe I wouldn't have called in different situations. But I had to be empowered to do that. I had to be empowered by him, by my teammates, by my team, by my manager, to be able to do what needed to be done to be successful in that game. And I had that purview. I'm watching that ball just hang there. I'm watching it not move the way it should drop, and being able to see that. And I think that's really important. And like I said, I tell that story because it really ties back to a lot of what we're going to talk about today. So first, let's set some context. Just move that out of the way. Sorry about that. We live in interesting times, right? As I said, this is the first time or the third time I've been in the office in a year and a half. All of our lives have been disrupted. It's unknown. We didn't expect this a year and a half ago. We certainly didn't expect this 2 years ago. But we have to make changes. We have to evolve. We have to make decisions based on this. And we have to make decisions on how we're going to move forward. And has COVID really triggered some sort of a turning point? Are we moving from, we used to be in an industrial age and we had a turning point that moved us into the digital age? Are we in a new turning point that COVID has created? I don't know what it would be called. Some people have made some guesses. But are we in a place where we now are starting over and we're starting to learn differently and we're starting another path through? It's very, very possible. And what's different? What would change? Well, when we think about the age of mass production, we had long-term investments in planning horizons. Well, in the digital age, short-term, we need to make decisions, and things are changing and they're constantly changing. In mass production, we're all focused on short-term profit. How have we done this month or quarter? In the age of digital, we think more about our mission and our impact. And if we do good things, it's going to have that impact on profits and so on. And we really start to look at these things. One of the big ones that certainly jump out, there's a couple at the bottom, specialization of labor versus cross-functional teams, process control versus self-organization or self-management, and management being the leader and the king rather than the rise of the creator, the people doing the work having the power. And that's changing, and it's changing rapidly, and really a big part of what's driving this need for agility. Some people would call it controlled chaos, and getting the controlled chaos. I find this this really interesting in this quote from Charles Darwin. It's not the strongest of the species that survive, nor is it the most intelligent, but it's the most responsive to the change. And when I think about Scrum.org and the organization that I work for, in February of 2020, wow, I dated myself a little bit. In February of 2020, 100% of Scrum.org training classes were done in person, 100%. We teach around 5,000 to 7,000 students every year. Well, in February, and certainly here in the US in March, things changed earlier in other countries. There was no face-to-face training. What did we have to do? What did we do? Well, by the middle to the end of April, we were able to pivot. We were able to be agile and start delivering live classes in a virtual environment. We're able to change and respond to this immediate change. To do that, it takes a mindset. It takes trust in the team. It takes the ability to execute in all of those things. And we didn't know if it would work. We do things like interview our customers. We survey our customers and all kinds of things. We had no idea. We were skeptical, honestly, will this work? But we also knew that people were still wanting to be trained, and we had an opportunity as a mission-based organization to help them. So we did it, and the responses were amazing. The feedback has been incredible, and I think virtual training is here to stay. But we have to be able to respond to that change, and you do in your businesses, you do in your organizations. What you do and how you do it has to change. And people want to change. Most people, not everyone, but people need to and want to change. So with that, just kind of want to set a little bit of the scene and a little. What is Scrum in this case? What do I believe professional Scrum? And I think I'll talk about it in a moment. But so what is professional Scrum? So Scrum is now 25, almost 26 years old. Scrum was first introduced in 1995 by a gentleman and our founder and chairman, Ken Schwaber. Ken, with Jeff Sutherland, presented a paper at an event called OOPSLA, an object-oriented analysis and design event, and I believe it was in San Antonio or Austin, Texas, back in 1995. And it was based on theory, lean theory and agile theory and thinking of a bunch of folks, some folks out of Japan and others, and really something that Ken had been trying and working with different clients and different customers to apply as a way of thinking. Most people today who say agile, often they think Scrum when they say agile. What's interesting is the Agile Manifesto, which was kind of the first foray into this real world of agility, was signed several years later in 2001. So Scrum came before Agile, if you will. So what is Scrum and why do we have it? Well, we live in many different worlds. We have simplicity, we have complicated, we have complex, and we have anarchy. Scrum works very, very well in that complex and complicated world. It helps us to test hypotheses. It helps us to validate thoughts. It helps us to get feedback and at the end of the day, deliver value. And really, in simple, we need defined processes. In simple, if we're, say, manufacturing and on the manufacturing line, we do this, then we do this, then we do this, then we do this. If I deviate from that, now I've got, say I'm in pharmaceuticals, I've got FDA problems. Or if I'm in automotive, now all of a sudden there's a door missing. I must follow those processes. In complex work, I need to understand because I don't know all of the answers from the beginning. I need to figure them out as I go, and I can't just plan everything up front. So what we do is we probe, we sense, and we respond. Scrum, within Scrum, we have a team of people doing the work. We have stakeholders and customers that are important to us in providing that feedback and that we're trying to satisfy. And I'll talk a lot more about this as we keep going forward. So as I said, Scrum is an empirical process. It's a set of principles and values. That empiricism provides an area of transparency. Ken Schwaber, who I talked about, our chairman and co-creator of Scrum, I'm actually going to be meeting with him in about 45 minutes. Ken talks about the fact that some people are very afraid of Scrum, and the reason they're afraid of it is it exposes often the way things are working today. And it exposes a lot of the problems, and now we have to be able to inspect those problems and fix those problems. But people are often afraid of that when it comes in. Those three pillars: transparency, then inspection. Right? We inspect how we work, and we adapt how we work. And we do that in a continuous cycle. We're always inspecting and adapting, both the work product as well as how we work. And that requires a significant amount of trust to be successful. Within Scrum, we have a set of values. We need to have courage. courage to empower our team members, courage to do the right thing, courage to speak up when we think something is wrong, and so on. We need to focus. We focus on our goal, whether it's the product goal or the sprint goal or the work we're doing at the moment. Committing to the team and to the work that the team is doing. We may not always agree, but once we make a decision, we commit to that decision and we move forward. Respect for each other and the team and our customers and our stakeholders, and that openness to share those feelings and work together. There's a great case study on our website. If you were to go to our website and search Intralinks, INTRALINKS, or Lindsay might put it in the chat, there's a great case study, and it talks about what they called the Scrum reboot. And what they meant by that was they started and were using Scrum, and they weren't doing very well. What they realized is they were doing what I would call mechanical Scrum. And you'll hear all the process stuff in a few minutes. They were following Scrum. They were having a daily Scrum. They had a Scrum Master. They were doing retrospectives, but they weren't upholding the pillars and the values. They weren't upholding that transparency. They weren't always inspecting and adapting. They didn't follow the values. They didn't have the courage and respect for each other and so on. So what they did was they started over. They called it their reboot. They got back together and said, okay, how do we fix this? Let's not blame the process, which is very easy to do and many people do, but let's inspect and adapt what's not working. Let's retrospect on that and figure out, how do we fix it? How do we improve? And they realized what they were missing here, and they started over. They did training, they did coaching, they did a lot of work to change that mindset of the people of, no, we're not just following a process. We're really in a new mindset. We're really doing things in a different way. And that became super, super important to the way that they work and how they work. So check out that case study. It's pretty long. I think it's about 30 pages, but it's some really fascinating reading about what they learned and how they changed. So with Scrum, everything starts with a product goal. We have a goal, where we want to get to, and we commit to that goal. Now, that goal better change. I would say should change, but if it's not changing, we're probably not really inspecting and adapting. We're probably not learning along the way. And you know, maybe we're looking out at a 6-month horizon or a 3-month horizon or a 12-month horizon. We have a goal for where we want to get to. And those product backlog items support that goal. As we start to build and deliver upon that goal, we're going to learn things. And that goal is probably going to change. It may change small or it may change drastically because we're going to learn as we go. But that goal is super critical. It's that vision for where we're heading. And beyond just the vision, it's a tangible thing. We're going to deliver X that does this for people. And that sits in our product backlog. And in all of the work that we're planning is in support of that goal. So the product backlog is a structured list of how we're going to achieve that goal. Those are those product backlog items. The product backlog is ordered by the product owner, and it's a way, and it's transparent. That everybody should have access to see that. And we work together to deliver what's in that product backlog. We work together to help define and deliver on those things, and I'll talk a lot more about that. But the product backlog is that structured list of priorities, and maybe they're too big and we need to refine them, break them down into smaller chunks, or maybe they're well defined already and we can work together to do that. We have a sprint. So a sprint is what can we do in the next X weeks. A sprint is no more than 30 days, and it's our opportunity to inspect how we work and adapt. And what our goal at the end of that sprint is to deliver value. We're delivering value every sprint. And that value can be determined in many ways, but we're delivering value and it must be inspectable so that we can get feedback to make sure we're doing the right thing. Or if we're not, how do we change and evolve that? A great story about one of Ken's very first Scrum projects. If you remember, and some of you probably aren't old enough to, I do, back in the early 90s or late 80s, probably the early 90s, we really started to see online stock trading happening. There were companies like E-Trade out there and some others that were making it very easy for the consumer like you and me to just go out and buy stock and sell stock. You didn't have to go through a broker. You didn't have to make phone calls. You could just go online and do it. And Ken lives here in Lexington, Massachusetts, not too far from Fidelity's headquarters. Fidelity, a big financial institution here in the US. And they said, we are in trouble. Right? We have all this consumer market is getting taken away from us. We need to do something. We need to build a product to allow for that. So they built this huge backlog. They had tons of requirements. They had this plan that was, an 18-month or whatever plan, and said, okay, we're going to go deliver on it. The problem is, it was an 18-month plan, and they weren't getting anywhere. They were getting into analysis paralysis. They were, not necessarily getting feedback. So after several months and lots of money, they called Ken in and said, can you help us? So Ken looked at where they were and what they were doing, and his first reaction, there's a video where he tells this story. His first reaction was, well, how do you know that in 18 months that's even the right solution anymore? How do you know what you're building now isn't going to be obsolete in 18 months? How about we just start with something and get some feedback and then keep evolving the product? He said, give me enough money and a team of 10 for 30 days. Let's deliver something. Let's get some feedback and then keep delivering. So over those 30 days, and so it took them a little bit of time to meet the team and everything, they got together and they built their little product backlog and started building and inspected and adapted how they worked. And within 30 days, they had something that they could show to customers that just would allow them to, I believe it was just to place an order. That was it, something simple. But they were able to get feedback on that, and it added value. People could place orders. Then they added more features and more features every 30 days. And some of the features they added, they got feedback that they needed to throw out and restart or maybe redesign. And that's okay, because they were getting that feedback on an ongoing basis that they were able to quickly deliver value. It's not about delivering more stuff. It's about delivering value, delivering the right things, getting that feedback from those users and the stakeholders. And one other important thing, and I talk about this all the time, is value to one is not value to all. And that's why we separate out, or I separate out when I talk about it, stakeholders from customers. A customer might really, really, really want, I don't know, feature X, but they're only willing to pay $1 for it. Simple math, right? That feature may cost $2 to create. Well, I don't think our other stakeholders in our business are going to really like it if we deliver something that customers really want that costs us $2 to make and they pay $1 for. We won't be delivering it very long for customers because we'll be out of business. So we have to balance value and really look at what is value across and throughout the team. We daily scrum every day. This is not a status meeting. This is an opportunity to inspect and adapt where we're heading toward our sprint goal. Every sprint has a goal, which is a piece of or on our way to our product goal. And we meet every day to talk about that. And do we need to change things? Are things getting in our way? What do we need to do to evolve our process? Do we need other help in all of those things? It's a 15-minute or less meeting. And the goal really is to focus on that sprint goal. And are there things that we need to do to be successful? What's important here as well is not to make it just a status meeting, because then we just go through the motions. All right, here's what I did today. Here's what I'm going to do tomorrow. Thanks, bye. No one's paying attention. We're just kind of almost management reporting, and we're not engaging each other. It should be an engaged meeting. It should be an event where we come together and we talk and we communicate. And if it ends early, that's okay too. It doesn't have to be a 15-minute meeting. It just shouldn't go longer than those 15 minutes. And we may take other meetings that come out of that and schedule things, but it's there as not that opportunity, and it's that opportunity to do so. I've heard people call it a daily stand-up and other things. I've got two issues with calling it a daily stand-up, or three actually. One is it's called a daily scrum. The reason this whole thing is called Scrum, it's not an acronym, and yes, it is based on rugby. When you think about what happens in a rugby scrum, for those of you familiar with rugby and those of you who are not, maybe it's a lesson, the team gets together, right? You've seen those people all their arms around each other. You wonder what's going on there. They're getting together and they're pushing the ball forward. The job of the scrum is to get together and push the ball forward in the scrum together as a team. In Scrum, we are focused on how do we move the product forward as a team to deliver value. And that's where this is based off of. It really is based off of rugby and Scrum. And we're looking at that goal as to how we move and continue to move and evolve forward. I don't like it called a daily stand-up for that reason. Scrum has a real intent meeting here. I don't like it called a daily stand-up because the minute everyone stands up, all of a sudden it makes it really easy sometimes to become a status meeting. All right, let's go. Everyone stand up and go around the room. And then I've also had team members on my Scrum teams who can't physically stand. I think we just offended them by calling it a daily stand-up. And you know, I want to be sensitive, and I am, and I have lived through being sensitive to that. And that is one of the reasons that that I look at that. But it's really about, let's make sure this is not a status meeting. The sprint retrospective. What can we do better? How can we improve? How do we improve our process? This isn't where we look at the product backlog and look at the work that we're doing. This is really look at how we work. How do we work as a team? How do we work together as a team? And how do we improve how we work? That is preceded by the sprint review. The sprint review is where we get feedback on what we've done and figure out what do we need to do and maybe add product backlog items, get that feedback from our customers, our users, our stakeholders, and others. I've heard people call it a demo, and we talk about demonstration, but I want to caution you on that as well. It's not a demo. And when I hear the word demo, and I've got some sales and marketing in my background, I think we're going to go do a demo. We're going to demonstrate. And what am I doing when I'm demonstrating? I'm showing you all of the good because I want to sell you on my product. And that's not what this is about. This is an opportunity to get feedback and talk about the things that maybe you don't know. Ask questions. Well, we implemented it this way, but we're not really sure. How do you think it should work? And get that feedback, get that understanding, and really not look at it as a demo, but look at it as a product feedback session, a sprint review. Here's everything we've done in the sprint. Try it out, check it out. There's many, many ways to do sprint reviews. There's a great website called tastycupcakes.org, and they've got all of these different ways to run sprint reviews and sprint retrospectives and daily scrums and sprint plannings and the like. And what they look at all of those different pieces. But make sure when we're inspecting that increment, when we're doing the sprint review, that we're doing it in a way that gets us feedback, that helps the Scrum team learn how they can improve the output that they're delivering, the value that they're delivering to customers and stakeholders. And that's to me, that's one of the most important pieces of Scrum. There's the how do we improve how we work as a team, and how do we improve what we deliver over and over in a consistent manner. And by the way, that increment, that's the combination of everything that's been delivered throughout a sprint. I can deliver every minute, every hour, once a day, or once a week, once every 30 days, whatever. It doesn't have to be, well, we have to wait till the end of the sprint. We can deliver when it makes sense for the business. It might be after the sprint, as long as it's demonstrable and something that we can get, and we're getting value out of it by getting that feedback. that's okay. It doesn't have to be, only once every 30 days, for example. And it's as simple as that. I think I missed something here, and I don't know if it just wasn't a box or my slide was missing, but it's sprint planning. Sprint planning is where the team comes together to plan the next sprint, or actually it's the current sprint because it starts with the sprint planning. It looks at the product backlog items. We work with the product owner to define that product goal and look at the work that will satisfy that goal, which then forms the sprint backlog. That sprint planning does not need to encompass everything. We don't have to have a full sprint backlog coming out of sprint planning. As a matter of fact, I think you fail if you come out of a sprint backlog with enough work to last the 2 weeks or the 30 days, depending on the length of your sprint. Because if you do that, then that means how are you inspecting and adapting the work along the way? When you go to implement something, and it doesn't matter what it is, it could be a software product, it could be a marketing message, it could be a new data sheet. If we're going in saying, here's everything we're going to do for the next 2 weeks, and we think that's what we're going to do for the next 2 weeks, are we really inspecting and adapting the work as it goes and as we deliver little pieces of it? Or are we better off, all right, here's enough work to get started. We know what our priorities are. We know what our goal is. Let's continue every day in our daily Scrum to talk about how we're achieving that. And as we have opportunities to pull in new work that meets that goal, that are those priorities, we pull that work in based on what we learn as we go. And I hear this question a lot. I see it when people take certification tests. Excuse me. I see it on our forums of, well, do I need a full sprint backlog? Does the sprint backlog coming out of sprint planning have to have all of the work we're going to do during the sprint? And my short answer is it should not. Not just no, but it shouldn't, because I'm going to learn along the way. And if I start putting preconceived notions into that sprint backlog, I'm going to make decisions based on what I already see and not based on what I learn as I go. And then you'd see the little box over there on the lower, it's on the lower right for me. I assume it's the same for you. The Scrum Guide. The Scrum Guide is the body of knowledge of Scrum. It's short, it's 13 or so pages, and it defines this framework. It's simple, and it's simple because it's a framework. From the framework, process evolves. Every team is different. I know we always say that, but it's true. Those teams are different, and the work that works for me may be different for you. So we know we're going to have these things. We're going to have this set of events. We're going to have these set of artifacts, and I'll talk about teams in a minute. Other than that, you may pull in practices from Kanban, and that's okay to improve flow, for example. You may pull in XP practices. You may pull in specific practices from the technology you're using, and that's okay, as long as your team agrees that that's going to help you be more successful and you're doing these things. It's about that inspection and adaptation. It's about that empirical process. We learn and we change. We learn and then we evolve. We learn and we grow. And then there are 3 accountabilities, or some, they used to be called roles in Scrum, but the problem with roles is people start defining job titles, and they're not really job titles. These are the things that have to be done. We have a product owner, and the product owner is responsible or accountable, for maximizing the value that the Scrum team delivers. Developers, they deliver, they do the work. They deliver that increment and figure out how to pull that together. And the Scrum Master takes many stances. They help the product owner, they help the developers, they help the overall team, they help the organization be agile, do Scrum. The Scrum Master is not a manager, but they are a leader. But of course, anybody can be leaders. But they take different stances as they go. They may be a mentor, they may be a coach, they may be a trainer, they may facilitate. They're there to help serve the team with what the team needs to be successful. They're not a scribe. I was having a conversation with somebody earlier today, and they were asking, well, if we have a Scrum team that's distributed, because we're all working in distributed worlds, or most of us these days, who schedules the daily Scrum? Shouldn't that be the Scrum Master? And my response was, why? Are they the administrator for the team? And the response was no. I said, well, then the Scrum team can figure out who schedules it Maybe they rotate scheduling it. Maybe now maybe the Scrum Master decides, yeah, I'll take that one. But the team comes up with that decision. The team is self-managing, and the team works together to figure out what is right to do. So self-management, as I just was kind of alluding to, we've got our product owner, our Scrum Master, and our development team, our developers in this case, and they make up the Scrum team. And there must be that mutual respect. They must have shared values and goals and commitments, but they must be both independent, but they have dependencies across each other. And we put working agreements together and those sorts of things. That self-management comes back to, and that's why I told that story in the beginning of being behind the plate and catching in a baseball game. It really is about allowing the team to have the flexibility that they need to make the right decisions, because they're closest to the problem, and therefore they're closest to the solution. They see what's happening. They're integrating and working with stakeholders. You don't isolate the stakeholders over here that only the product owner can talk to them. The sprint review is an opportunity for everybody, for example, to work with stakeholders and get feedback and understand what is happening. And we need to empower our teams as leaders to do that as well. So the Scrum team must have all of the skills it needs to deliver a done increment. Hopefully more than one team member has a specific competency, but we don't have to be able to, not every individual has to do everything. I've heard people talk about comb-shaped people and pie-shaped people and T-shaped people and those sorts of things. I think it's very rare to find a comb-shaped person where they go very broad and they also go very deep. There are some of those people, but there are very few of them. What we need are all of the skills on the team to be successful. We also need the ability to work together to learn, because if Joe's out tomorrow, Jill may have to take on some responsibility or some work item. So it's good to have cross-pollination. It's good to have cross-skill levels, but Joe and Jill don't have to have exactly the same capabilities as well. So what does this all mean? The core ideas of Scrum are very simple. It's an empirical process or framework. Teams are empowered and we're always improving. Empirical process, let me just move this over for a second. Empirical process drives a different way of solving problems. We don't just run the system, but we learn. And as we learn, we evolve, we change, we improve what we do. Teams are empowered. People aren't resources allocated to things. That's what hardware is. People are not just interchangeable. They have a set of goals, a set of outcomes, and they're focused on delivering that goal. And they're always improving. They're always improving how they work as a team and as individuals, for example. An improvement for the deliverables in the way that they work. Not one person owns the process, not one person owns the product, other than the people that are doing the work. Management doesn't come down and say, you shall do this, or you shall do it this way. Now, there may be some things, like if you're in pharmaceuticals, some FDA regulations that you must abide by. That's cool. That's part of your process. It's part of your definition of done, for example. But how we get the work done and how we accomplish that work, let's let the team figure that out, because they know the best way to do it. They know what works for them. They know what's working in their environment. And they're responsible, they're accountable for delivering that work. Let's empower them for that accountability. And to do it requires a set of values, users, discipline, and ongoing learning. If we're going to do this and do this right, We need to have those capabilities, and we need to drive through those capabilities and that mindset within the organization. So in summary, don't leave your brain at home. And I like this saying, because if you're just looking, or people are just looking to come into the meeting and be told exactly what to do and not have to think, Scrum is not for you. Scrum is a place where we remove that industrial thinking and we start thinking about how can we improve the ways we work and the outputs that we generate and deliver. It's about constant improvement, and ongoing ways to improve that. It's about checking your ego at the door, because that feedback from customers is going to help us deliver the right solution. It's amazing. I've been in product management or product ownership most of my career, dating back to the first product owner job or product manager job I had was on a product from a little company called LogicWorks, a product called Irwin, or some call it ERWin. It's an old data modeling tool from the early 90s. And I was the first product manager for that product. And when I think about it, if I came in and said, I know what all the customers want to my development team, we would have delivered the wrong product. Generally, people don't use products the way we think they're going to use them. They use them the way they think they should use them. And we need to learn from that to improve. We need to learn from that in order to improve the customer experience and improve our outputs. Otherwise, we're not delivering value to those customers. I remember early on in my career at LogicWorks, we had a requirement from a bunch of customers. They wanted, they defined it as a data dictionary. They wanted a way to not have to type what name means every time or type what a customer is. They wanted a box or they wanted a dictionary that said a customer has a name, an email address. They may not have even had email addresses back then. It was early 90s, but we'll say an email address, a phone number, fax number, and the like. And so, went to the development team, worked with them, and said we need a data dictionary. And we were actually delivering fairly iteratively at that point. And during that process, I went out to customers and started to show it and get feedback, because we delivered that functionality in a way that it was now able to be shared with customers. And I went out and they said, well, that's great. So now I've got this list. How do I use it? Like, well, you said you needed a data dictionary so you could predefine it. And then you can go in there and change it. It'll change it everywhere. And they said, that's great, because we want to be able to change what a customer is. We want it to change everywhere it's used in the data model. They said, but how do we get it actually on the model? Model's a visualization tool. Like, oh, yeah. So you actually wanted more than a data dictionary. You wanted the ability to drag and drop that on your model and share it and show that it's linked to the data dictionary and all of those things. So we actually paused a release. We thought we had something that was potentially releasable. We went back into development, paused that release to make it so that it was more accessible, and that data dictionary was able to be used in the modeling environment. And I tell that story because it's about getting that feedback. It's about learning how people are going to use something and then helping them deliver upon it. So with that, just briefly, who is Scrum.org? I've talked a lot about Ken already. Ken is our founder and chairman, and he co-creator of Scrum. Scrum.org is a mission-based organization focused on helping people and teams solve complex problems. We do that through thought leadership, things like this webinar, thousands of free resources, blogs, articles, videos, and things up on our website, all of those for free. Training. We teach consistently around the globe. We have about 350 trainers all over the world teaching the same content, same material, helping teams learn in a consistent manner. Certification, validating what you learned to help prove your knowledge or assess where you need additional learning. And then learning paths to help people keep learning as they go through community. So with that, I want to say thank you and see if we have any questions.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Eric, for that amazing webinar, diving right into Scrum. And we have a lot of questions coming in, like a lot. So it's going to be a really good time. I do want to say before we dive into questions, If you need to run, have no fear, this webinar is being recorded and will be emailed out to you within the next 48 hours. And if you haven't had a chance to pop in a question yet, let us know, and we'll be able to definitely send it over to Eric. All right, so the first question that we have is more of a clarity question. I think it kind of goes to what we've been talking about overall, but this is from Scott. And Scott is saying Scrum versus Agile, question mark.
Sure, great question, Scott. Scrum is an agile framework. Agile is really a mindset and a way of thinking. It's about putting people over process and the like. You can go check out the Agile Manifesto. I think it's agilemanifesto.org and learn about that. Scrum is a framework that helps me be agile. Agile is really how I think, how I act. It's the ability to react to change. It's the ability to empower my people. It's changing the way we think, that we don't have to know everything from the beginning, because we don't. So a lot of the mindset things I talked about, that's agile. Scrum is that framework that helps empower agile thinking.
Perfect. Thank you so much for the clarification on that. Definitely see the relations with that. So thank you. Next question kind of goes along a little bit of that. This is from Shireen, and they're saying, greetings from South Africa. Question, what is your take on, is there a place for a project manager in Scrum, and what role would a PM take in Scrum?
Sure. So you should have come to my webinar, I think it was last week or 2 weeks ago, which was, I'm a project manager. My company said we're now agile. What does that mean for me? And short answer is it depends. Of course, that's like, the typical consultant answer or something. But yes, there are many organizations that still have a PMO, for example, a project management office, and they still have project management working with the Scrum team as a service, for example, to help, report status and gather information and what's being delivered and how it's being delivered and that sort of thing. So there absolutely can be value in having project managers involved, depending on how the organization is structured and how the Scrum teams are structured. Depending on your abilities and your capabilities as project managers, maybe another role is even better for you. Maybe you're great at facilitating and great at coaching and teaching and helping people and helping people succeed. Maybe you'd be a great Scrum Master. Maybe you're really good at doing business analysis and really good at working with customers and other people within the organization, and not defining the solution, but defining the problem. Maybe you'd be a great product owner. So the short answer is yes. The longer answer is what that means may be defined by how you're structured and what your organization is.
That's a really, really great point. And honestly, that dives right into the next question here. This is from Amy. And Amy's asking, is it realistic for traditional PMs to transition to Scrum Masters? What are the pros and cons?
So I actually, so not only did I do a webinar on this, I've written an article on it as well. And it depends on what you want to do from a career perspective, and it depends on what your personality type is. Maybe you're a project manager, and I don't ever mean this to sound insensitive or negative. I think project management is very important, and certainly in certain areas. Maybe you're very good at managing the project. And what I mean by that, you're great at making sure people are delivering what they need to deliver. You're really good at managing spreadsheets. You're good at communicating status and all of those things. But maybe you're not good at facilitating and getting and coaching, getting other people to come up with answers. You dig in and this is me. Dig in and find the answer yourself. Well, maybe you're not a good Scrum Master. Maybe you're better in a product owner role, or maybe you're better in a more traditional project manager role. As a Scrum Master, we're not necessarily solving the problems, we're helping people figure out how to solve their problems. Maybe you're really good at that as a project manager, and I've worked with some project managers that are incredible at that. They're amazing at working with the team and the personalities on the team, as there are many, and getting that work happening and helping the team be successful. So it really does depend. It depends on on your goals and your skills as an individual. I would almost look at it as just because, I'll go back to my baseball analogy. Just because I'm an outfielder that can throw the ball really hard doesn't mean I'd be a good pitcher, because when I'm throwing it from 200 feet away, I don't have to hit a target that's this big.
That is a really great point. Really great. Even if no one's ever played baseball and knows of it, right?
Yep.
Still great. The next question that we have here is from Piyush, and they're asking, what is the difference between a PM and a PO?
So I assume when you say PM, you mean project manager, and PO product owner. The product owner is accountable or responsible for ensuring that we deliver value in the end and defining what that value is. They're working with all of the stakeholders, they're working with customers, they're working with the Scrum team in a way to define that. They own and manage the product backlog. So they're defining those requirements. In some ways, they're doing business analysis work. They're working with those customers to define what's needed. They're working with management to find goals and the others in the organization. The product owner, at the end of the day, some will talk about it as kind of a mini CEO. They own all of the responsibility. If we deliver the wrong thing, well, the product owner is on the hook, because now we didn't deliver value. If we deliver the right thing but we didn't deliver it well, that's probably the developer's accountability or responsibility. But they're responsible for, the product owner is responsible for delivering value in the end. And that means understanding their market, understanding their customers, understanding their competition, and really being that Uber owner of the product. Project manager, there's many ways to define that. I talk about it in the other webinar I referenced, but they're generally don't get involved in how and what's being delivered. They're just primarily involved in making sure it gets delivered. That's a high level definition.
No worries, that's what everyone's here for. And I love that little, what did you say, mini CEO? That's awesome. And that actually relates to another question of Amy's. And Amy is asking, can you do Scrum without a product owner? Our organization is trying to manage products with Agile and using Scrum components, but we're challenged with getting product owners from our business areas.
So I would say if you don't have a product owner, you're not doing Scrum. You're doing parts of Scrum, but you're not doing Scrum, because if you don't have a product owner, who is defining the work that needs to be done? Who's prioritizing that? Who's defining the product goal? Who's defining working with the team to define the sprint goals? Who's providing clarity as to what those requirements are? I've been in companies where we try to do product ownership by committee. It generally does not work. What happens is you have lots of opinions, and then you get to what we call the hippo, the highest person in the room, or I forget exactly what hippo's highest paid person's opinion is what hippo means, and you end up building what that person wants and not necessarily what the committee, if you will, wants. Having somebody ultimately responsible and accountable for that vision, for that goal, and defining what we need to achieve that goal is critical. And the minute it becomes a committee, you end up just going in different directions, because everybody has an opinion, and opinions are good, but how do we make sure that we bring those opinions together to have a holistic vision, and that we're not working on 20 different things every sprint rather than focused on one sprint goal?
Excellent, excellent answer. Thanks for kind of dispelling the myths a little bit about that for people. And a real quick follow-up to Piyush's question. They met with a PM, they met the product manager, a product manager, not a project manager.
Okay, so often a product owner will have product managers or business analysts that they work with. Often those folks are more subject matter experts at a piece of that product and they will help them write requirements. They will help them do business analysis. And often those those product managers will work with a product owner. Sometimes a product owner is a product manager. Often I've seen it where the product owner works with product managers to help them refine and define the product backlog items.
Perfect. Thanks so much for that clarification. I feel like a couple people might have had that burning question too.
Awesome.
So the next question, I'm just going to kind of rapid fire here. We've got a lot coming in. So if your questions weren't answered today, everybody in our audience, have no fear. I will definitely be sending them over to Eric, or you can reach out to Eric as well on LinkedIn. Reach out to him, check out what he's doing on Scrum.org. But lots of opportunities to still get your question answered afterwards. So the next question is from Raksha, and they're asking, how do you promote transparency and courage within a Scrum team? I find that team members are afraid to challenge each other.
I don't think I have a 4-minute answer to that one, because it's not easy. It's about making people vulnerable and allowing them to be able to feel vulnerable. It's about getting people to be open and open with their ability to receive as much as give. There are some exercises, there's some on the Tasty Cupcakes, for example, that kind of help make that. And there's a bunch of exercises that I've seen people run to do that. At the end of the day, though, it starts with trust and building the trust within the team. And as the team starts to trust each other, they become more open, they have more courage. As a Scrum Master, some of it is about helping to correct, coaching to correct behaviors as well. If you're a Scrum Master and you're observing shutdown type behaviors, working with that person or people who are shutting others down to realize that they're doing it, because often people don't realize what their behaviors are, and working with them and helping them to improve, to better enable the teams and better enable the team as a whole to be successful. So it's not just telling somebody something, but they may not understand it, they may not realize it. And if you have somebody who is that dominant player, working with them to kind of take a step back and kind of empower others to do things. We've here at Scrum.org, we've kind of gone through a little bit of a transformation in some of that by helping people and pairing. We do a couple of things to facilitate some of our meetings, like our daily Scrum, for example. It's not the Scrum Master's responsibility to facilitate it. It's the Scrum teams. So by enabling different people to facilitate the daily Scrum was tough because people are scared. So we started to pair. Okay, Lindsay and Joe, you facilitate tomorrow. Kelly and Daphne, you do the next day, and so on. So that if one of them isn't confident, together they're stronger, but also they can learn from each other and build more of that courage and the like.
Love it. Took a question and put it down to 2 minutes. So great answer, Eric. Perfect. And we'll be also sending out everyone Eric's email. So if we are not able to answer today, we'll make sure that you can definitely reach out to him. So we only have about a minute. I'm going to see if I can just squeeze this last one in. I think it's a question a lot of people are asking. And it's okay if you go over time just a little bit, because I think this is really important. But this question is from Kate, and they're asking, what are the nitty-gritty qualifications to be a Scrum Master?
I'm not sure there are nitty-gritty qualifications. You have to be the right person, the right personality. Check out, actually, maybe Lindsay can post it. There's a great white paper on the stances of a Scrum Master. It's about that. It's about having that personality to want to help people and to be a servant leader. You have to have leadership qualities for sure, but you have to want to help. You have to be a good coach, a good mentor, a good trainer, a good teacher, a good facilitator, at the end of the day, you have to be able to, not just want to, but be able to help people. You don't have to be technical. You don't have to be, you know, you don't have to be the expert in everything. But a good Scrum Master has very, very good facilitation and coaching skills.
Love it. It's a great synthesis of everything we've talked about today, right? All components.
Exactly. Yep.
And if you're a great Scrum Master, you can also be a great rugby player, right? A great baseball player, maybe. Yep. All right, everyone. It looks like we're at the top of the hour, and that's all the time that we have for today. I hope you all had an amazing time and got a lot of great nuggets of information out of this. Thank you to our incredible speaker, Eric Naiburg, for coming out today and sticking with us and everything. Thank you all for attending as well. And if you have any questions, of course, Eric Naiburg is available. Let him know, send him an email, and just say hello. Thank you guys so much, and I hope you have a good rest of your day. Bye-bye.
Thank you, everybody. Stay safe.